Catherine, everyone's staying home due to the ice storm. Christmas dinner is cancelled. Stay safe. The message from my mother came with the same clinical politeness she always used with me, like I was some distant acquaintance rather than her eldest daughter. I read it twice, disappointment curling in my stomach, but I understood. Nashville winters could be unpredictable, and safety came first. Or so I thought. That simple text would unravel everything I believed about my family and my place in it. My name is Catherine. I'm 32, an accountant, and until last Christmas, I thought I was just the awkward one in my family. The quiet, practical sister who never quite fit into their loud, chaotic dynamic. My younger sister Anna was the golden child, the family's radiant centerpiece. I had long accepted my role as the supporting character in Anna's starring life. I settled in for a quiet, lonely Christmas. Hot chocolate, Hallmark movies, leftovers for dinner. I convinced myself it was fine. This was my life. Then at 3 p.m, my world cracked open. Scrolling absent-mindedly through Instagram, I froze at a post from my cousin Nina. Perfect family Christmas at Anna's. So blessed for this time together. The photos showed all of them. My parents, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, even my grandmother, gathered around Anna's table, bathed in warm candlelight. My mother was beaming, holding up a tray of her famous Christmas cookies. There was no ice storm. The sky was bright and clear through Anna's dining room windows. I stared at the screen, bile rising in my throat. They hadn't just forgotten to invite me. They'd invented a fake emergency to make sure I wasn't there. The family ghost, the photos kept coming. My father carving the turkey, my nieces and nephews opening presents, Anna in a red velvet dress, the center of attention, as always. My stomach twisted painfully. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a decision. They didn't want me there. Every cancelled event. Every text saying plans had changed. How many times had they done this? How many holidays, dinners, spontaneous get-togethers had they scrubbed me out of? The next morning, my phone rang. It was my mother's cheerful voice, as though nothing had happened. "Hi, honey. Hope you had a nice, quiet Christmas. We missed you." I could barely breathe. "Did you?" I asked, voice shaking. "Of course. Such a shame about the storm." "There was no storm," I said quietly. "But there was a Christmas dinner at Anna's. I saw the pictures." The silence stretched until I could hear her breathing. "Oh," she finally said. "That was all the very last minute. Anna just threw something together." I remembered offering to help Anna plan Christmas weeks earlier. I remembered her brushing me off, saying she wanted to keep things simple. This hadn't been last minute. It had been planned, and I'd been excluded on purpose. The lifetime of exclusion. I always knew I wasn't Anna. I wasn't charming, magnetic, or effortless the way she was. I was the planner, the responsible one, the daughter who helped with taxes, who sat through boring estate meetings with Dad, who quietly wrote checks when money got tight. Anna, on the other hand, was the star. When she dropped out of college to become a yoga instructor, my parents called her brave. When I skipped vacations to help them pay off their mortgage, they barely said thank you. The signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them. 3 years ago, when Dad needed surgery, I took weeks off work to care for him, driving him to appointments, organising medications, cooking and cleaning. Anna showed up once for an hour, took a few selfies with him, and left. Later, when my parents told the story, Anna was the caring daughter who came to his side. My contributions were edited out. I swallowed the hurt over and over again until it became part of who I was. The call that changed everything. "Catherine, you're being dramatic," my mother said when I confronted her. "No," I said, my voice steadier now. I'm being honest. You didn't want me there, so you lied to me. She sighed, as if my reaction was an inconvenience. You can be so awkward at family events. Anna wanted everything to be perfect. That's the excuse? I laughed bitterly. I'm too quiet for your perfect Christmas photo. You work so much, she said defensively. You're always too busy for family. I felt something crack inside me. You mean too busy paying your bills, taking care of Dad, filling in every time you needed something? Enough, Catherine. Her voice sharpened. Maybe we need some space until you can be reasonable. The line went dead. I sat there staring at the phone as a lifetime of memories rearranged themselves into a new, painful truth. I'd been nothing more than a convenient afterthought, until I wasn't even that. The email bomb, I didn't cry. Instead, I opened my laptop and started typing. I addressed the email to every family member who had smiled for Anna's Christmas photos. I attached screenshots, my mum's cancellation text right next to my cousin's glowing Instagram posts. I want you all to know exactly what you did, I wrote. You didn't just exclude me from Christmas. You lied to me, deliberately and collectively, and made me spend the holiday alone while you celebrated as a family. The replies came fast. My Aunt Marie claimed it was an honest mistake. My Uncle Robert said I was being overly sensitive. Nina, the cousin who exposed them, deleted all her posts and sent me a message begging me not to make drama. And then there was Anna. You always make everything about you, she wrote. All I wanted was a perfect Christmas without tension, and you ruin everything, even when you're not there. That's when I knew. There was no saving this family, not for me. The secret betrayal. A week later, I got an unexpected message from Rachel, an old family friend who once handled my parents' finances. There's something you need to know, she said. We met at a cafe downtown, and she slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were financial records dating back 15 years. My hand shook as I read. My grandfather had left $300,000 specifically for my education and future, money I'd never known about. My father was the trustee. The money was meant to be released to me at 25. Instead, it had all been transferred into Anna's accounts. My entire inheritance was funneled into her yoga studios, her retreats, her luxury trips, all while I took out student loans, worked overtime, and paid for family expenses out of my own pocket. There was more. My parents had sold off properties meant to be split between Anna and me. Using a power of attorney they had me sign at 18, under the pretense that it was for medical emergencies. They didn't just exclude me from Christmas, they stole my future and handed it to Anna. Confrontation and collapse. Armed with the documents, I confronted them. You stole my inheritance, I said, laying the papers on the dining table. My mother's face drained of colour. My father blustered, denying it at first, until I pointed out his signature on every transfer. It was for the family, my mother finally said, her voice trembling. No, I said. It was for Anna. We didn't think you'd mind, Anna chimed in, not a shred of remorse. You're always working. You don't even like luxury trips. The sheer audacity knocked the breath out of me. You spent my money and made me feel guilty for not contributing enough, I said. You left me out of everything while I was the one keeping this family afloat. We're family, my mother said weakly. No, I said, we're done. The aftermath, I filed legal action to recover what I could. It wasn't about the money anymore, it was about the truth. About reclaiming my voice. The family splintered. My parents tried damage control, spinning stories about me being mentally unstable. Anna played the victim on social media. But the paper trail didn't lie. I moved to a new city, started fresh. I built a life without them, one where I wasn't the backup plan, the silent bank, or the ghost in the family photos. On Christmas Eve, a year later, I stood by my own tree with friends who had become my real family. I wasn't just included, I was wanted. The ice storm they used to cut me out had melted away, and I was finally free. Why tell me now? I asked Rachel, my voice tight with disbelief, hands gripping the edges of the manila envelope like it might disappear if I let go. Rachel's expression was a mix of guilt and urgency. Because I saw your mother's posts. She's been telling everyone you're unstable, that you've always been difficult. They're trying to discredit you before you can figure out the truth. Her voice dropped. Catherine, they've been embezzling from you for years. This isn't just morally wrong, it's criminal. The room felt too small, the air too thin, everything slotted into place like a horrific jigsaw puzzle, the subtle digs at my character, the constant attempts to undermine my credibility, the gaslighting disguised as concern. The fake ice storm wasn't just a cruel trick, it was part of something far bigger. They were building a narrative where I was the problem, to cover the fact that they were the thieves. I slid the papers back into the envelope with shaking hands, the accountant in me already mentally cataloguing the evidence. Thank you, Rachel. I know exactly what I need to do. This wasn't just about Christmas anymore. This was about years of calculated theft, manipulation, and betrayal. And for once, I held the power. You're building the case. In the days that followed, my grief hardened into focus. I did what I'd always done when life spun out of control. I turned to numbers. Cold, impartial numbers. With Rachel's documents as a foundation, I spent hours reconstructing the financial story of my own life, tracing every unauthorized transfer, every missing dollar, every fraudulent property sale executed under the power of attorney they'd manipulated me into signing at 18. They'd always underestimated me, but they'd forgotten one crucial fact. I was a forensic accountant. Following money trails was what I did for a living. Every lie they'd told was buried in bank transfers and deeds, and I was going to bring it all to light. I hired Sarah Chen, a specialist in estate fraud, to review my work. This is overwhelming, Sarah said after her first read-through. The sheer scale of the fraud. It's not just theft, Catherine. It's systematic financial exploitation, and it's enough for both civil and criminal charges. I didn't hesitate. I want every option on the table. Are you prepared for how messy this will get? She asked gently. It's not just money, it's your family. Family. The word felt foreign now, a label for strangers who shared my DNA and nothing else. They stopped being my family the moment they stole from me and made me feel guilty for not giving enough, I said. Let them feel what it's like to be powerless. The family summit I didn't strike immediately. First, I gave them a chance, not out of kindness, but out of strategy. A chance for them to face me and see exactly what they'd done. A chance to confess. I sent an email to my parents and Anna, requesting a family meeting at my apartment. They responded with forced cheerfulness, clearly believing this was my white flag, my awkward attempt to patch things up. They couldn't have been more wrong. The morning of the meeting, I arranged 3 identical folders on my dining table, each one labelled with their names. Inside were a full accounting of the stolen funds, documentation of every fraudulent transaction, a letter from Sarah outlining their legal options, voluntary restitution and confession, or criminal prosecution, They arrived in high spirits, their usual smugness filling the room like stale perfume. My mother launched into her script immediately. "Catherine, sweetheart, I'm so glad you've finally come to your senses. We were so worried about you." I didn't bother with small talk. I slid the folders across the table. "Before you say anything, you should read this." They exchanged glances but humoured me, opening the folders. I watched as my father's face drained of colour, his fingers trembling on the pages. My mother's mouth tightened into a thin line, her eyes darting from document to document like she could somehow rewrite them by sheer willpower. Anna stared, uncomprehending at first, then with mounting panic. This is ridiculous," my mother blustered. "What is this? You're blackmailing your own family?" I leaned back, arms crossed. "Number, I'm giving you a choice. Return the remaining funds with interest, sign a written confession admitting what you did, or I file criminal charges." My father's voice shook. "Rachel had no right to—" "You had no right," I interrupted, voice sharp as a knife. "You took everything my grandfather left me, my education fund, my inheritance, even the properties meant to be split between Anna and me. You sold my future and watched me drown in student loans while Anna lived off my money." Anna's face crumpled into tears. "I didn't know. Mom and Dad said it was their savings." I didn't even blink. "The bank records say otherwise. The money went straight into your accounts. You knew." My mother tried to retake control, her voice dropping into that performative hurt she wielded like a weapon. "Think about what this will do to the family, Catherine. What will people say?" "What people say doesn't concern me," I replied coldly. "You should have thought about this when you lied, stole, and humiliated me. You have 48 hours to decide." They left in silence, my mother whispering frantically to my father as Anna sobbed into her sleeve. I felt nothing, no regret, no guilt, just clarity. The fallout. The countdown began. Almost immediately, the family group chat erupted with frantic messages. My parents had already started spinning their version of events. I was unstable, holding a grudge, misremembering things. Aunts, uncles, cousins, they all lined up to take their side, desperate to preserve the illusion of the perfect family. I let them talk. Every lie they told, every attempt to discredit me, I forwarded to Sarah. She documented everything. "The ball's in their court now," I told Sarah, "but I'm not holding my breath." I was right. When the deadline passed, they hadn't just refused my terms, they'd gone into full cover-up mode. They tried to close accounts, transfer assets, shred documents, even contact Rachel to pressure her into recanting. But it was too late. I had already submitted everything to the authorities. Briefs the trial that tore it all down. Over the next year, the case unfolded like a slow, inevitable collapse. My father faced felony charges for embezzlement and fraud, my mother for conspiracy and misrepresentation, and Anna, though not directly charged, became a named beneficiary of stolen funds. The community that had always idolized my family watched in stunned silence as the truth spilled into public record. The stolen inheritance, the manipulated power of attorney, the years of lies and theft masked by holiday cards and staged family photos. They didn't just lose their money, they lost their reputation, their house, their savings, their standing in the community, all gone. Anna's yoga studio shuttered, her inspirational influencer brand permanently stained. I could have felt victorious, but what I felt was free. The real family that Christmas, the first Christmas after everything came crashing down, I spent the day with friends, the kind of friends who became family by choice, not obligation. We cooked together, drank too much wine, and took photos no one was excluded from. photos where I wasn't an afterthought, I was part of the story. As midnight neared, I stepped outside into the cold, the sky clear and glittering. No fake storms, no lies. Just the clean, quiet air of a life no longer weighed down by a family that never really saw me. In the end, they gave me the greatest gift of all, freedom. The morning after the deadline passed, I filed the charges. By mid-afternoon, the police were at my parents' door with search warrants in hand. From my office window, I watched the story unfold in real time. A scene I never could have imagined growing up in my picture-perfect family. My father was escorted from his workplace in handcuffs, his face pale and stunned, as if none of this could possibly be happening to him. Anna's yoga studio, the crown jewel of her curated persona, was seized as an asset purchased with stolen funds. The image of her standing outside the studio, surrounded by confused clients and flashing cameras, would eventually make the evening news. My mother's carefully curated social media life crumbled in the most public way possible. She was arrested mid-meeting at her beloved charity committee, the very people she had spent years impressing. There was no way to spin her way out of this. No perfectly worded post, no flattering filter strong enough to hide the cold steel of handcuffs. The family group chat exploded again, but this time the tone was different. The smug dismissal and self-righteous anger were gone, replaced by stunned silence. Relatives who had once scolded me for causing drama were suddenly very, very quiet as the evidence, undeniable and damning, became public record. That night, my phone buzzed with a simple message from Rachel. "You did the right thing. Your grandfather would be proud." For the first time in months, I felt the tightness in my chest ease. Rachel was right. This had never really been about revenge, not in the way my family would try to paint it. It was about justice. It was about the truth finally standing taller than their carefully crafted lies. And most importantly, it was about freedom. A year later, I sat in the sunlit living room of my new home in Denver, watching the snow drift lazily outside my window. The court case had concluded months ago. My parents had both accepted plea deals, agreeing to full restitution. Not that they had much left to repay. The house, the cars, the retirement accounts, all liquidated to cover the debt they owed me. Anna's yoga empire had crumbled just as quickly as it had been built. With no more stolen funds propping up her wellness lifestyle, she'd been forced to get a real job. A receptionist at a local dental office, from influencer to office staff in under a year. I wondered if she finally understood what it meant to work for something, instead of having it handed to her at my expense. The perfect family image they'd spent decades cultivating was gone. Not a trace of it remained. No more holiday newsletters filled with half-truths. No more carefully staged Christmas photos sent to family friends. They were no longer admired. They were pitied, whispered about at grocery store checkouts and neighborhood barbecues. Most of my extended family, the same ones who had enabled my parents' lies for years, had gone silent. Some out of embarrassment, others out of misguided loyalty. Surprisingly, I didn't miss them. Their absence felt less like loss and more like removing dead weight. In their place, I built something new, a life on my own terms. I found my people, friends who valued honesty over appearances, colleagues who respected my work instead of seeing it as a footnote to someone else's story, and even a few distant cousins who had reached out, full of quiet apologies for the way they had blindly followed the narrative my parents had spun for years. Last week, Rachel came to visit. We sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee and reminiscing about the storm my life had weathered. After a while, she reached into her bag and handed me an old, worn photo album. "I found this while cleaning out some of your parents' records the court released," she said softly. I flipped it open, and there it was. A flood of forgotten moments. Photos of my grandfather and me fishing at the lake, my tiny hand clutching the fishing rod while he steadied me with his strong, weathered hands. In one picture, we were both laughing, some long-forgotten joke frozen forever in time. "He always said you were the strong one," Rachel said, her voice gentle. "He knew they favoured Anna, but he believed you would overcome it." I traced my finger over his smile, feeling a sting of both grief and gratitude. My grandfather had tried to protect me, to secure my future even after he was gone. They'd stolen his money, but they couldn't steal that belief, that quiet, unwavering faith in me. In the end, his final gift wasn't the money they squandered. It was something infinitely more valuable, the courage to finally see my worth, to stop begging for scraps of love, and to build a life where I was no longer anyone's afterthought. As the snow continued to fall outside, I closed the album and rested my hand on it, feeling its weight, not just of paper and photos, but of truth, resilience, and freedom. Hard won. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming untouchable. It's choosing yourself, and that's exactly what I had done.